Welcome to video part 2 of a multi-part series on, Alexander the Great with your favorite professor, teacher. Yes, teacher, Mr. Moore. All right, where we left off last time, the Spartans surrendered to a man at Thermopylae. Unlike their great-great-great-great-grandfathers did 160 years earlier at Thermopylae when the Persians came through, now they just hand over the pass to Philip of Macedon. Philip pretty much beats Greece in like a battle. Like there was like one battle between him and Thebes, and that was it. And that battle means the death of the city-state. After that, the city-state, the polis, is no longer a viable entity. It no longer works. It's not big enough, it's not powerful enough, there's all kinds of reasons, but it just no longer works as a political or military unit. And the Greeks have remained some rights under Philip because Philip isn't interested in destroying them, he's interested in acquiring them. There's a key difference there. And Philip eventually dies under some interesting circumstances, to say the least. And his son Alexander, at the age of 20, takes over the rule. I emphasize to you, he is 20 years old. Philip died, I think, sometime in his 40s, maybe. But Alexander's 20 years old, he gets the rule of Macedon. And he gets all of Philip's reforms. One of the other reforms and he was fighting in the cavalry under Philip. He was the leader of the cavalry. He was not like some sissy royal boy who did nothing and then got the rule. He was very much a part of the conquest of Greece, among other things. And he rode at the head of his cavalry unit. Some things that need to be mentioned about his cavalry. This was another one of Philip's reforms. So there's two big reforms with the infantry. The guys with the long spears called sarissa, S-A-R-I-S-S-A. Add an E to the end and it makes it plural, sarissa, sarissa. Sarissa is the spear, sarissa is spears. And this is what Alexander eventually embarks upon. I want to mention a couple things first, though, about the cavalry. Cavalry was previously used, the horses were a lot smaller than they are now. Right? Today, a horse is probably like over 5 feet, like the back of a horse can be over 5 feet tall. Not the head of the horse, of course, but the back of it. Horses, standing taller than me at 5'10". Horses can be over 6 feet tall when you count their head and over 5 feet tall when you count their back. So instead of being up to my shoulders, like the back of a horse, instead of being up to my shoulders, in the ancient world they were closer to my chest or even my waist sometimes. They are much smaller because they were bred during the Middle Ages to be bigger. One of the few really cool things that come out of the Middle Ages. Anyway, horses could still carry men and they could still be a very viable military vehicle. So what Philip did was he got some of the larger horses, started, of course, trying to acquire the biggest ones he could, because of course they can carry more weight. Put people on them with heavier breastplates and things, heavier armor, spears, and shields, kind of like a hoplite riding a horse, but not with a 24-foot spear, with a shorter spear. And a sword. And he trained them daily, training. Always training them to be better, to work better as a unit, to fight as a unit. And they would fight in a rhombus formation. Rhombus is like a diamond. Alexander, of course, is always at the tip of the diamond. is always the first one into the battle. And these are shock cavalry. These are not running people back and forth from battle. These are not skirmishing cavalry where you kind of, throw a couple javelins and then run away. Because, of course, you have horses, so you can run away. These are shock cavalry. These are trained to clash against infantry. Not just other cavalry, but also against infantry. Typically in the ancient warfare, cavalry is going to basically fight cavalry. In general. Because remember, a phalanx is specifically designed to repel horses. The reason a phalanx becomes popular is because horses won't run through it. Now they've trained horses to basically, if not quite run through it yet, at least run up against the side of it and pound it from the side. And just pound it over and over and over again until it just gives way and runs. That said, Alexander is also not fighting against phalanxes. He's fighting against disorganized Persians. I say disorganized because they fight under many different banners from many different places of the Persian Empire, which is huge. And although sometimes they fight as units that they're used to, they don't necessarily have armor. They're made for speed, remember. This is why the phalanx just rolls over them. And this is for the same reason why a mounted phalanx, which is essentially what Alexander's shock cavalry are, can also roll over them and make mincemeat out of them. Alexander fights 3 huge battles against the Persian Empire. He is vastly outnumbered in all of them. And and the Persian commanders are quite capable and good. In the Persian wars, the Persian commanders were not very good. Artemisia was the best one. She was a woman, so they didn't really like that. And she was far and away the best. She was basically the reason she was great had a lot to do with the fact that she basically said, don't fight them here, fight them there. Don't fight them here, fight them there. And the Persians said, oh, our army's so big it doesn't matter. And then the Greeks proceed to cut the army in half. And the Persians go, okay, my army's not so big anymore. And some of our commanders are dead. So that was kind of a problem. Oh, and by the way, they're in full retreat. Yeah, no, doesn't look so good. But it doesn't matter how big your army is if it's fleeing the battlefield. Anyway, the Chaeronea was the battle that I mentioned earlier, which was against Thebes and Athenian and Spartan quote-unquote allies. That marked the death of the city-state. After that, so that's 338 BC. After that, he goes from Macedonia down into Persia. He goes to Sardis. He first hits his first battle at the Granicus. That's a river. Alexander is totally outnumbered and totally outgunned. He has the low ground. There's a river in between him and the Persians, and he's trapped. Absolutely trapped. Darius, the king of Persia, has every advantage possible. And he knows it, and he works it. But Alexander basically says, oh crap, I'm screwed. So he does the only thing he really knows how to do, which is charge. Usually that's not a very good idea during war. Usually a frontal charge is a 50-50 shot at best. And you don't want to do it with an inferior force, which is what he does. However, his quote-unquote inferior force was essentially mounted hoplites. Now, who remembers what happened when mounted hoplites pretty much just bum-rushed a giant Persian army at, say, Marathon? Yeah. Basically that. So he rushes his cavalry across the river. He says, oh my god, we're about to die. We're about to get destroyed. He rushes his cavalry across the river as fast as possible. Now, if he dies, they're done. I mean, he's their commander. Without their commander, even for a short time, there's a very good chance that the cavalry gets wiped out. And if the cavalry gets wiped out, the infantry is probably going to be surrounded pretty soon afterwards. But his cavalry gets real close to the Persians and beats back some of them, and the rest of them flee. It's like, what? they're just amazed that he can just essentially just run across the river and fight them. So he wins at the Granicus, because half of Darius' army flees. And he marches down, gets to Sardis. Remember, Sardis is the place that had been burned way long ago that supposedly started the Persian War. Well, not supposedly, but probably had something to do with the Persian War. That's kind of why the previous Darius, cleverly named, or I should say conveniently named, went and attacked Athens. Because, of course, they had helped burn Sardis. They had helped these Greek colonies that were over here on these islands and up this coast, Greek colonies up here, fighting a rebellion against the Persians. The Persians had nominal control over them. By nominal, I mean they sent them tribute, but the Persians didn't really meddle in their affairs at all. They were still Greek. They fought a revolt. Athens helped them, or they fought a revolt. Athens helped them. Eventually, they burned Sardis at one point, and Darius didn't like this, and Xerxes had the slave remind him. Darius had the slave remind him, blah, 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 remember Athens, remember Athens, remember Athens. Darius goes and fights at Marathon, gets his nose bloody. Xerxes goes and fights, gets more than his nose bloody. Basically gets his army, about half of it defeated. Comes down through, gets to Gordium. Alexander may or may not cut the Gordian knot. Does he cut it or does he untie it? These are the subjects of another video, possibly.